Good morning. This is the first video in a series of videos on the basics of lesson planning that you can utilize to complete your world portfolio. In this video, I'm quickly going to speak about the issues that you need to think about before you start planning your lesson on your lesson template. In our minds, a well-prepared lesson looks like this. What I planned is what happens in class, but in reality, the picture on the right is usually what happens. Everything life happens while we are teaching, and we have to keep that in mind when we are planning our lessons. We cannot be rigid and assume that everything that we are planning will pan out as planned. A well-prepared lesson is very dependent on the memory of the teacher, and therefore it stays on track. If your lesson is poorly planned, you may easily lose the track of your lesson and you won't reach your proposed outcomes. When your lesson is well planned, it will lead you on the right way and it will keep you on the right way. If your lesson is poorly planned, it will not be systematic, it will not be structured, and it will lead to a lot of confusion in your class. When a lesson is planned, we can regulate the amount of content that we are going to cover in that lesson. You are going to find that for the first amount of lessons that you plan, you will very often include too much or too little content. With experience, that will become much better. The same goes for outcomes. It is easy at the beginning to put too many outcomes in your lessons. So we are going to spend a whole video talking on how to structure lesson outcomes because that will be the guideline for the rest of your lesson. When you have a well-planned lesson, you have options for easy and effective learning material and learning strategies, where if you do not plan your lesson, it is a sort of all goes effect, and that will definitely lead to wasting time and you will have serious issues with classroom management. When you plan a lesson, you will also be able to quickly and proactively think of alternatives. It is going to happen that you will plan a lesson that on paper looks very well, but the moment that you try it in a class, within the first few minutes, you see that it's not working. And that is why it's very important to have in mind. So long before you decide what's going to happen in your class, there are a few questions that you need to ask. The first one is this. Who are the participants in this lesson? Is it grade 2? Is it grade 8? Is it grade 10s? Do I know what the age-appropriate content is and age-appropriate teaching strategies? What are the aims and the objectives of this lesson? Is it linked to the CAPS outcomes? When will this lesson take place? When you're a full-time teacher, this becomes important. Is this in the period at the end of the day or is it early in the morning? Where will the lesson take place and what resources do I have? What is the content of my lesson, which is the most important aspect? And how is this lesson structured? Is it a double period? Is it a short period? Is it a long period? Do I have a class or a small class? The best way to begin a lesson is to begin with the end in mind. So when you know where you want to go, what you want your learners to know in the end, then it is going to be easier to set the outcomes. So we have to know what is the end that we have in mind. To consider before you start planning your lesson, the CAPS document. Where are you in the CAPS document? Have you gone and looked at the year before and the next year so that you do not do too little or too much? What knowledge, skills, and values do my learners need? In the next video, I will distinguish between knowledge, skills, and values. What is the context of the bigger picture in this subject that I'm teaching or in this skill that I'm teaching? What part of this am I busy with now and how important is this? What is the context of my learners? What resources do they have available? What is my lesson outcomes? So that I don't start my lesson with the outcomes in mind and then I lose track and I end up teaching something that is not at all related to the outcomes. And the fifth very important aspect is constructive alignment. Constructive alignment is the process where the lesson outcomes, the activities we do, and the assessment we use are all aligned. They all speak to each other. This is the end of the first video. In the next video, I will spend some time on what is knowledge, skills, and values, and how can you ensure that you choose the right knowledge, skills, and values for every lesson that you plan.